Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
You have Katarina Jang.
And Nikki Robbins of Spectacle Marketing.
We're very excited to talk to you all about inclusivity in marketing and why representation matters. This is Katarina. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm the strategic director at Spectacle, which means I primarily work on marketing strategy. That can range from social media strategy for a small business to go-to-market strategy for a new product launch. And I'm also really passionate about advancing the Asian American movement, which I do through my work at Slanted, which is a creative collective that celebrates Asian American identity through personal storytelling.
And I'm Nikki. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm the content director at Spectacle. We call ourselves an inclusive content marketing agency. So, what I do is I create content for all of our clients, whether that be social media copy, crafting email campaigns, or writing blog posts in an inclusive marketing lens.
And at Spectacle, our mission is to help advance diversity, equity, and inclusion through all of the work that we do. So I'm sure you all have noticed, but Colorado can be pretty homogenous in terms of race, background, perspectives, beliefs. And as one of the only female and minority owned and operated marketing agencies in the area, we sincerely believe that it's our duty to inspire cultural diversity in Colorado's creative community. So whether we're talking about inclusive language like we are doing here today, and conscious marketing campaigns, or holding our clients and the people around us accountable when we see that they can do better, we're always on a mission to educate our community about how we need to work together to create a more inclusive future. So let's get started with some statistics about why inclusivity is so important today.
Yeah, so let's start off with these statistics. So first of all, 63% of people of color claim that they don't see themselves represented in most advertising, and 72% feel that most ads don't reflect the world around them. That's a pretty large number of people. 70% of millennials are more likely to choose one brand over another if that brand demonstrates inclusion and diversity, and our purchasing power is projected to reach $1.4 trillion in 2020. So that statistic really talks about brand loyalty and how the more that a brand demonstrates DEI within their practices, people are more likely, millennials specifically, are more likely to support them. And then lastly, more than 91% of US marketers agree that there's more work to be done in terms of DEI in marketing and representation. And that's why we're here. We're so excited to help brands around us be more inclusive within their marketing. And frankly, just these statistics show that if you don't see yourself represented in these products, consumers will never buy your product or see themselves using them. So it's extra important to increase representation in your marketing.
And in addition to all these stats that show why POC need to be represented and why that's good for brand loyalty, we also just wanted to set the stage about what happened in 2020. So clearly this was a very surprising year. There was a lot of turmoil, and we really think that what did happen in 2020 requires people to have more inclusive marketing than ever, to be more sensitive to the state of the world, and to make sure that your marketing isn't offensive, it's not racist, it is inclusive of everything going on in the world and inclusive of all perspectives, backgrounds, beliefs, abilities, and races. So just a brief recap of 2020. We had a resurgence of the movement for Black lives after the murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and unfortunately many more. We also obviously had the COVID-19 global pandemic, which disproportionately affected marginalized communities worldwide. We had a big calling in reckoning happening on social media and media in general, where employees and consumers are holding companies accountable for their lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion advocacy efforts, both internally and externally. And then we also had a historic US presidential election. So clearly this was a big year for us and for what we see in our marketing. And we just want to reiterate that being inclusive, being diverse, and also not being performative in those things, and making sure that you're also being inclusive and diverse within your business practices is now more important than ever. And your communities are really going to hold you accountable to this mission. So let's move on to what is inclusivity. We have here Well, according to the Oxford Dictionary, inclusivity is the practice of including people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as those who have physical or mental disabilities and members of minority groups. But we do have a little bit more of a human definition on the slide. We have inclusivity is the practice of leveraging every individual's passion, commitment, and innovation, especially uplifting those of marginalized and minority groups. And so, we do want to point out that inclusivity is different than diversity in terms of a definition. So, specifically in the workplace, diversity can refer to having better representation of minority groups. So, ensuring that you're hiring women and other genders, hiring people of color, hiring folks of different backgrounds and perspectives. So, that is diversity and making sure that different people of different groups have a seat at the table. Whereas inclusivity refers to creating an environment where all people feel valued, respected, and have the same access to those opportunities. So we like to talk about the fact that if diversity is being invited to the party, then inclusion is being asked to dance. And we also want to note that inclusivity is not a passing trend. It's a little sad that when we're researching this topic, we have so many articles on why DEI is better for innovation, innovative decision-making, or organizational health, company culture, and ultimately enhances a business's bottom line, which is all true. But I think the more important reason as to why inclusivity isn't a passing trend is it is simply the right thing to do. We want to be good humans. We want to create a more equitable future where everyone's perspectives and skills are valued and utilized. A future where everyone can see themselves in the work that you create. And so we really just want to work together to create this future where everyone is included. And that is a little bit about inclusivity basics. We're going to move on to how to keep inclusivity in mind as a marketer.
So there are so many ways to keep inclusivity in mind as a marketer, but these are just our top 4 tips. Learning and understanding tokenism, language, compensation, and doing the work. So let's start off with tokenism. So definition-wise, it's the practice of making only a perfunctory or symbolic effort to be inclusive to members of minority groups, especially by recruiting a small number of people from underrepresented groups in order to give the appearance of racial or sexual equality. So it's the appearance, it's the symbolic, the performative effort. It seems like nowadays there's really such a mad dash in the marketing and brand world to improve diversity, and tokenism is just diversity without inclusion. You're not actually trying to fix a problem, you're just trying to cover it up in a performative way. So as an example, only hiring models of color to advertise your products when you've never had models of color wear your products before, you don't hire any people of color. It's simply symbolic to look like you're being inclusive. And even if you had the best intention of being more diverse, impact is more important than intention. So good intention isn't just fairy dust that magically undoes the harm that's been caused and makes everyone forget about the harm that you actually did. So making sure that when you are thinking about creating more diversity within your brand, within your marketing, thinking about, like Katarina said, what are you doing internally as well? So, for example, there is a concept called rainbow washing, which around the time of the Pride festivals and celebrations, which is normally around June, there's a lot of corporations, a lot of brands that all of a sudden are talking about LGBTQ plus rights, and it seems more of like a corporate incentive. It seems like there's a misalignment in values and you're commodifying that awareness because you've never really spoken about these issues in the past. You're not donating money towards it. In most cases, these corporations actually have funders who are anti-LGBTQ. And so making sure that inclusivity should be integrated into your brand ethos isn't just a one-off campaign to be, again, tokenizing and performative, but really making sure that what you are marketing is something that you are also upholding within your business practices internally.
And moving on to language. So this is obviously a very big subject that we could talk about forever, but here are some tips to get started to make sure that you're using inclusive language. So the first tip we have here is pronouns, and just being very cognizant of the pronouns that you're using, always asking other people for their pronouns, never assuming what someone's pronouns are based on the way they look. So we have here misgendering or using incorrect pronouns can be harmful and violent. So we encourage you to include your pronouns in your email signature, introduce yourself with pronouns, and ask others for theirs, just to make sure we're being inclusive of different races and different identities, and also making sure that we're identifying people in the way that they should and choose to be identified as. The second tip we have here is microaggression. So beware of comments that may seem indirect or subtle, but are actually unintentional acts of discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic minority. So something that you can do here is hire a sensitivity reader or hire someone that can read over your language just to make sure there are no microaggressions in there and you don't say something that unintentionally is harmful. And then lastly, just externally, there are so many resources for using and learning inclusive language. We highly recommend just searching on Google if you're unsure of whether a word is correct, or if you're unsure whether something is up to date. So language is always changing. There are always new and better terms for being inclusive of certain groups. And we encourage you to just always keep learning, to admit your mistakes when you make a mistake, and just stay open-minded, because this is something that's ever evolving and ever changing. So just make sure you're always doing your research on what is the most inclusive language for certain groups and certain issues.
Great. So moving on to compensation when we're talking about business ethics and hiring people. So, I mean, it's a very basic topic, but unfortunately it happens so often in the creative world that we figured it was worth a mention. Compensate people of color and folks in marginalized groups, period. On a very, very basic level, never rip off of a POC artist or work of someone in a marginalized group, or honestly, don't rip anyone off, period. But we're more talking about inclusivity here. If you're going to share their work, so let's say you want to repost a graphic of theirs or a piece of work of someone's, or you're inspired by their work, always give them credit and link back to their portfolio, website, and or social media accounts. Even better if you reach out to them directly, DM them, and ask them for permission. And on a better level, compensate people of color for their work. If you ever do collaborate with them, rather than taking from them, finding a way to uplift them by paying them with money to create something for you, and stop asking people to work for free. I'm sure, as a lot of our fellow entrepreneurs know, working for exposure is not the same thing as working for money. You can't pay your bills with exposure. It is not an acceptable form of payment. And lastly, on the best level, collaborating with creatives in marginalized groups is amazing. Asking them to work with you on a project from the very beginning, similar to what we were speaking about like diversity of thought. It's always amazing to have people with different backgrounds, different identities, and different points of view to collaborate with you on projects where they may be able to suggest things that you never even thought of. So collaboration is definitely the best way to go.
Perfect. Now moving on to doing the work. So we recommend doing an inclusive marketing audit. So in terms of marketing, this means looking at your marketing efforts and your messaging, looking at your website, your social media channels, your emails. Are your marketing efforts inclusive of everybody? Do you have diverse perspectives and stories and imagery in your social media feeds? Are your events affordable, and can they service people who might not have money or might not have access in terms of their ability to attend certain events? So take a look at all your marketing efforts and see whether you're catering to one demographic or whether it's inclusive of all different demographics. And from there, you can start making a plan of how you can improve things, how you can include more people in your marketing efforts, and then also how you can include people internally so that it's not performative or it's not just a shiny facade that you have on your marketing channels. And then we wanted to add this as a note. We are not internal HR experts, but it is worth looking at your hiring and internal practices to make sure that those are inclusive as well. Again, we don't want anything to be performative, so you definitely want to make sure that the team you have in place is diverse, is inclusive, and that is truly going to be the first step to having that be a part of your brand ethos and not just something that you showcase on social media once in a while. So in terms of hiring practices, we all have implicit biases that steer us towards marketing and advertising to those who look like us. We highly recommend hiring D&I consultants who specialize in this area to audit your company, train your team on inclusive best practices, read through your job descriptions and hiring web pages, and conduct implicit biases training along with whatever it is they recommend that you need. And so highly recommend hiring an expert here to make sure that your internal practices are also inclusive, just as your marketing efforts will be.
Customers, I mean, looking at who your service or product is geared towards and if you're properly representing that in your marketing. Also language, using gender inclusive group addressers and steering clear of using microaggressions like we talked about, like a stereotype or a racial joke as a punchline of a campaign. It's really easy to use humor to market, but if it is harming a large group of people, maybe try something else. And then with imagery, instead of opting to use stock photos of POC, actually hire and compensate models and product testers of different backgrounds to represent your brand. And then use this imagery across your social media, email marketing, and website. So again, it's not just performative. These are people that you are compensating and have actually tried your product and have valid customer testimonials that you can then use across your social media as well.
Cool. Now we're going to move on to different case studies of brands who have done inclusive marketing well, so you can get ideas for your own brand and just kind of get the creative juices flowing.
So let's start with Hims. So Hims is a men's wellness and personal care brand that creates treatments for hair loss and ED. They strive to create an open and empowered male culture that results in more proactivity around health and preventative self-care. Love this quote. We hope to enable a conversation that's currently closeted. Men aren't supposed to care for themselves. We call bullshit. The people who depend on you and care about you want you to. To do the most good, you must be well. So they spark a lot of conversation about taboo topics like sexual health, anxiety, performance anxiety, Viagra and its side effects. So these are technically considered taboo, but they're really important for men to be open and curious about to benefit for their own health. In addition to featuring people of all races and backgrounds in their branding and marketing campaigns, they also create a lot of content that advocates for women's rights and LGBTQ plus rights. So here are like a few graphics from their Instagram account. So the first one is a post that educates their followers on healthcare discrimination against LGBTQ plus patients. And then a product that shows a man with vitiligo, which is a skin condition. So again, diversity in identities and backgrounds, and a call to action for supporting their national network of abortion funds. So we love that they're not only educating their community with their content, but also inspiring action and putting their money where their mouths are. I also saw a comment on this post with a man with vitiligo where a follower said that they saw the poster on a subway and it sparked a conversation with their daughter. So clearly this content is creating a more inclusive world for the next generation too, and is sparking that conversation that they're trying to spark. We love Hims not only for their branding and design, which again showcases diverse people, but we just love the content that they create and encourages people to be activists in their community for what they believe in.
The next example we have here is Sephora, and we decided to highlight Sephora for their inclusion of transgender people. And in June, they had this amazing campaign which takes a stand for trans inclusion and LGBTQ plus organizations called We Belong to Something Beautiful. We highly recommend looking up the video for this campaign. It's absolutely amazing. It was directed by Matt Lambert, who is known for his work in the LGBTQ plus community. And it's called Identify as We, and it features people in the transgender, genderqueer, and non-binary space just living their best, beautiful, boldest lives. And in addition to creating this one-off campaign that supports trans people, Sephora has also taken a stand in employing trans people. So again, showing that it's not performative, but it's something that's integrated into their company culture as well. So they provide in-store makeup classes and online tutorials specifically geared towards transgender people and people who are transitioning. And we love that this is not a one-off campaign where trans and queer folks are used as token models, but instead Sephora is actually catering to the trans and queer community through their hiring practices, their product offerings, and their marketing and branding. And this is a quote that Arabelle Sicardi wrote for them. And it reads, "To see a company cater to the trans and queer community, not as token models in one-off beauty campaigns, but in centering us as essential to their community is a relief."
Love it. So here are just a few additional initiatives we love, just going over these pretty quickly. So the Cosmos is a space for Asian women to care for themselves, their community, and their world through experiences. We love the way that their events always offer scholarships. They have price accessibility, so like sliding scale, pay what you can, and a snapshot of members and attendees in your area with photographs. So at a glance, you're able to see who's in the community around. And Girlfriend Collective, which is an athletic wear company that utilizes recycled materials in their products. I love that they have such amazing age representation in their marketing with the models that they choose. They also choose models of all body types and backgrounds, which we love. Yeah. Lastly, we have Gillette, which is a razor company for both historically for both just men and women, but we love that this recent commercial featured Black trans representation in such a predominantly white male industry. We love the storytelling behind it and how every person that has hair needs a razor, but usually aren't represented in this way, and we absolutely love the story that they told in this commercial. And then lastly, these are just a few of our resources that we like. MTV Decoded is a video series where they tackle important issues like anti-racism and white supremacy. Them is a website as well as an Instagram profile that's very educational around queer LGBTQ plus issues in the community. And lastly, Tonal is an amazing stock photo website with people of all backgrounds, identities, races, abilities, etc., which we love to pull from.
That's all we have for you today. We know that this is a really big topic, and this was sort of an introductory video and presentation about inclusive marketing. So if you all have questions on inclusive marketing, we encourage you to reach out to us if you're looking for help in that arena. These are our email addresses. Feel free to contact us. We actually offer office hours where you can have an hour of our time and we can answer any and all questions you have about inclusive marketing. We can even work through a campaign of your choosing to make sure that what you have planned for your marketing is inclusive. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in that. You can also visit our website at spectacle.work. You can sign up for our email list, stay in touch with us, and we also have a marketing bootcamp, which has everything we know about setting up a brand for success in terms of brand identity and marketing basics. So feel free to check that out if you're interested in that as well. That's all we have for you. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. We hope you thought it was helpful, and feel free to reach out to us if you need any help.
Thank you.
Thank you.